Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from the Unseen Utterance. As the year draws to a close and the nights grow longer, we thank you for listening to the whispers that linger in the dark. May this holiday season bring you warmth, curiosity, and just enough mystery to keep the shadows alive. In the coming year, may you continue to walk with us beyond the veil where silence speaks and unseen voices tell their stories. Stay curious. Stay in the dark. See you in the next whisper.
The motionless corpse standing outside my door. I remember those days like they were etched into my mind, even though I've left Fuzhou behind for a few years now. My name is Chen Haoming, and back then, I was 26, working as an IT guy for an outsourcing company that handled data for foreign clients. My shifts were mostly nights, from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., hunched over a computer debugging code, monitoring servers, and occasionally chatting with colleagues in the US via Slack. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough for a single guy living in a city like Fuzhou. I rented a room in an old renovated building on the outskirts, near the industrial zone, where rent was half what it cost downtown. The place was called Li Family Inn, run by an old woman in her 70s named Li Pa. She billed it as cheap lodging for workers and students, but honestly, it felt more like a haunted relic than a home. Let me start from the beginning so you can really get a feel for it. It was 2019, and Fuzhou was booming with industrial parks sprouting up everywhere like mushrooms after rain. I'd graduated from university in Beijing with a degree in computer science, but my family back in the countryside was poor, so I moved to Fuzhou to be closer and save on travel. My company was a small branch of an American firm, specializing in outsourcing code for mobile apps and data management software. Night shifts meant extra bonuses, but they wrecked my sleep schedule. I'd sleep during the day, wake up at dusk, and live in this upside-down world of endless lines of code and cold cups of instant coffee. When I was hunting for a place to stay, I scrolled through WeChat groups and spotted an ad for Li Family in clean rooms, cheap rates, near the industrial park, secure with cameras. The photos looked decent enough, so I went to check it out. The building was on the edge of town, next to a small river, surrounded by dense trees and muddy paths that turned to slush after rain. From the outside, it resembled an old villa from another era 2 stories tall, with a cracked brick courtyard overgrown with weeds. Li Popo greeted me at the gate. She was skinny, with white hair tied in a bun, wearing a faded traditional blouse, her eyes deep set and always darting away from direct contact. Room 204, 800 yuan a month, includes utilities and Wi-Fi. She rasped in a voice like wind through cracked wood. I nodded, signed the lease on the spot, and moved in that afternoon. My room was cramped, about 15 square meters, with peeling white walls cracked like spiderwebs. There was a single bed, an old wooden desk, and a creaky wardrobe that groaned every time I opened it. The window overlooked the river, but at night it was pitch black, with only the sound of water trickling and insects chirping. I set up my workstation by the window, plugged in my laptop, and connected to the Wi-Fi crucial for a coder like me. The first few days were uneventful. I got used to the wind whistling through the large gaps in the wooden door, the flickering fluorescent lights humming in the hallway like whispers, and that peculiar smell lingering everywhere. At first, I thought the odor was from the nearby river damp and fishy, but over time, I realized it was mixed with mold from the old walls, a metallic rust like dried blood, and the faint scent of old incense. Even though no one ever burned any, the inn had about 20 rooms, mostly rented to factory workers and students like me. I made friends with a few. The guy in room 203, Xiao Wang, worked at an electronics plant nearby and loved scaring people with ghost stories over shared dinners in the courtyard. This place used to be a temporary morgue. You know, back in the late Qing Dynasty, they'd store bodies here of people who died far from home, waiting to ship them back to their villages for burial. Some never got proper rituals, so their spirits wander, looking for a place to rest. I'd laugh it off. You're too superstitious, bro. It's 2019 science and tech rule. If there's a ghost, the cameras would catch it. He'd shake his head, serious as ever. Cameras catch them, all right, but ghosts don't cast shadows. I wasn't superstitious. As an IT guy, I believed in logic, code, and data. Ghost stories were just mind tricks from fatigue or bad lighting. But my habit of checking the security cameras started after a minor theft before I moved in. According to Xiao Wang, someone swiped his bike one night. Li Popo installed old-school cameras, afterward black and white feeds, no audio, covering the main hallway and entrance. We all had an app on our phones to access it. The quality was grainy like an old movie, but good enough to spot movement. I'd glance at it every night before starting my shift, just to be sure. The atmosphere at Lee Family Inn was always stifling, especially at night. It was eerily quiet. You could hear your own heartbeat, the drip of water from the leaky roof, or leaves rustling by the river. The hallway was narrow, barely wide enough for two people to pass, with dark patches in front of each door where the lights didn't reach, like deliberate shadows hiding secrets. Every morning, Lipopo would paste yellow paper talismans on the main door, and some wall corners thin sheets with scribbled red Chinese characters, but she'd never explain. "Don't ask too much. It's safe here. That's all," she'd say, then shuffle away with her bamboo broom. I wasn't one for superstitions, but slowly, I started feeling uneasy. Some nights, while coding ID here, what sounded like a faint sigh from the hallway or soft footsteps pausing outside my door. I'd tell myself it was the wind or my imagination from lack of sleep. Until that night in late March 2019, the first of 3 terrifying nights I coup onto race from my memory. That day, I got back to my room at 7 a.m. after my shift, exhausted. As usual, I showered quickly, scarfed down some instant noodles for breakfast, and crashed into bed until the afternoon. I woke around 5 p.m., checked work emails, replied to a few messages from my boss, and grabbed dinner at a cheap rice stall 200 meters, a white sauce, fish soup and white rice, simple but filling. By 10 p.m., I was back at my desk, starting my shift remotely since our services were mostly online. I sat there with headphones on, light music playing to focus, fingers tapping away on the keyboard. Around 1 a.m., I took a break, stretched, and grabbed a glass of water from the small filter in my room. Habitually, I opened the camera app on my phone to check the hallway. Nothing unusual. The corridor was dim, lights flickering softly, empty. I went back to debugging a stubborn JavaScript bug, but at 1:12 a.m., a chill ran down my spine, like someone was staring at me through the door crack. I glanced at the app again, and my heart stopped. On the grainy black and white screen, there was a figure standing right outside my door. At first, I thought it was Zhao Wang or another tenant, maybe drunk and lost, but the figure didn't move. It stood rigidly straight, arms hanging limp at its sides, head slightly bowed. Its skin looked pale gray, stretched like wax in the fuzzy image, the skin of a living person, and the most horrifying part, no shadow on the floor under the lights. The camera showed it clearly, but the wooden planks beneath its feet were bare, no dark silhouette. I held my breath, zooming in. It's as if you could call them that were dark hollows, unblinking, reflecting no light. It just stood there, motionless, like a forgotten wax statue. I convinced myself it was a camera glitch or a prankster in costume. I crept to the door, peering through the wide gap. The hallway was dark, but I could make out a tall shape, about 5 feet 10, in tattered old robes. I didn't dare open the door. Back at my phone, I checked the time. It had been there since 1:12, and now it was 1:30. 18 minutes, no twitch. My pulse raced, sweat beading on my forehead. I tried calling Zhao Wangren's, went unanswered. He was probably asleep. Call Li Po, too late at night, and I didn't want to cause a scene. I sat back on the bed, eyes glued to the screen. 1:45, still there. 2 o'clock, unchanged. Panic set in. What the hell is this? I whispered to myself. I took a deep breath and coughed loudly to test it. On the camera, its head tilted slightly, very slowly, like it was sniffing the air. The motion was smooth but unnatural, like a puppet on strings. I stopped breathing, and it froze again. I turned off the lights, lay still on the bed, trying to steady my breaths. On the app it remained. 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. Each minute dragged like an hour. The horror wasn't from sudden jumps. It was the endless stillness, the waiting. It didn't knock, didn't move, didn't fade. Just waited, as if patient for something from me. I'd seen horror movies like The Ring or The Grudge, but this was real, happening right outside at 7:19 a.m. As the first sunlight filtered in, it vanished, completely. The hallway was empty. I flung the door open, legs shaking, no trace, except a stronger smell, metallic, mixed with old incense sand. The floor in front was damp, like faint footprints from someone standing too long. I felt the hallway air naturally cold, even for spring in Fuzhou. I chalked it up to exhaustion-induced hallucination. I slept fitfully until afternoon, head pounding. That day, I asked Li Popo about the building's history. She was sweeping the courtyard, broom scratching the bricks. "Popo, is there anything weird about this place? Last night, I saw something on the camera." She paused, eyes avoiding mine. "You're tired, rest up. The house is old but safe. Don't overthink or you'll scare yourself. She stuck another talisman on the main door, a yellow paper with bold red script, and walked away without another word. I sensed she was hiding something. That evening, I told Xiao Wang over steamed buns in the courtyard. Bro, last night I saw this figure standing outside my door for hours. No shadow, grey skin. What do you think? His face paled. That's a Jiangshi, a hopping corpse, but not like in movies. Here, they were bodies stored without full soul recalling rights. They don't jump, they stand, waiting for living breath to take a spot. I scoffed. Come on, science. But doubt crept in. I googled the IN's history. After hours on local forums, I found an old post. The building was a temporary morgue in the late Qing era, holding corpses of migrant workers who died away from home, awaiting transport for burial. Some never got proper ceremonies, per folklore, turning into standing corpses, not killers, but seekers of bodies on the brink of death to stand in place. I closed the tab, calling it nonsense. But the fear lingered like a shadow in my mind. The second night repeated, but worse. I prepped by placing a small thermometer in the hallway for the chill I'd felt. Starting my shift at 10 p.m., I was on edge, hands coded, but mind wandered to the figure. At 1 a.m., I checked the camera. There it was again. Same spot, same rigid pose. This time, I studied it. Skin ashen, taut like beeswax. No breathing, no blinks. I held my breath, as long as possible it stayed still. But when I exhaled sharply from strain, its head turned slowly toward my door, like scenting my breath. Real panic hit. Heart pounding, breaths ragged and uncontrollable. On screen, it tilted more, motion eerie. I recalled Zhao Wang's words. Jiangshi, sensed not by sight or sound, but biological breath. Sleepers are safe with even rhythms. The awake, panicked, become targets. I tried meditating to calm down, but failed. The night stretched eternally until 7:19 a.m. It disappeared. Thermometer read 4 degrees Celsius, colder than elsewhere. Floor showed clearer, damp footprints. I barely slept that day. I called my mom back home, vaguely. Mom, weird stuff at my place. Superstitious as she was, she said, burn some incense and don't breathe heavily at night. Spirits smell life force. I laughed, but partly believed. The third night, I prepared thoroughly. I practiced meditation all afternoon, slowing my breaths to mimic death. I lay down early, lights off, waiting. At 1:12 a.m., it appeared on camera, motionless. I kept breath slow, steady. On screen, no head turn. After hours, it turned its back, shambling away down the hall. I sighed in relief, thinking I'd won. Next morning, I woke early, feeling lighter, hallway peaceful, sun shining. But screams echoed from across room 205, a 22-year-old student named Xiao Li. He died in his sleep. Doctors said stroke, but he was healthy. I checked the camera app. My blood froze. After leaving my door, the corpse stood outside his for 6 hours, from 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. I don't know what it was. A real Jiangshi. Collective hallucination. Li Popo said nothing, just added more talismans with a sad gaze. I moved out the next week to downtown. Higher rent be damned. But sometimes at night, I still check old camera apps, even deleted ones, and wonder, is it seeking a replacement spot for someone fading? And if I gasp in a nightmare, will it turn its head, standing motionless before someone else's door? I have no answers, just this. Since then, I sleep with lights on, monitoring my breaths every night. What about you? If you spot a motionless figure on your camera, what would you do?